How are you doing today? I'm Jeff. Today, I'll work with you to go through some basic concepts of the product, the marketing, and the productization. Like many of you, I love science, technology, engineering, and math. We are the believers of the technology. Sometimes we would forget it's equally important, arguably more important as how you turn a technology into a product in order to reach to the end users. This lecture is not for the marketing students, but for the future scientists and engineers to build a bigger picture. When you start your career in a technology company, you know who is doing what and hopefully see some opportunities. Even better, if you are considering to build your own business, what we cover today should be part of your considerations before you start. Who wouldn't agree that technologies are the foundation of the modern life? Think of the things around us. Either wireless or wireline, 1 gigabit per second internet is available to the regular users. This is achieved where 5G, LTE Advanced, or GPON, even DOCSIS 3.1 over cable facility. With a capable cell phone, you can easily achieve 800 megabits per second peak speed, and in average 250 to 300 megabits per second. The technology also enabled many new services and IoT use cases in the vertical markets. Home automation, smart city, private 5G network, just to name a few. Is the technology same as a product that we can offer to the customers? By the end of this video, I hope you will see difference between technology and product. Now let me switch to my slide deck. First, a bit introduction of myself. I'm a director in Telus technology team. Our team is responsible for wireless service DevOps, where we develop and deploy new wireless technology and services. We apply reliability by design, privacy by design, security by design at the get-go. I came to Canada late 1999, started in network planning and engineering. I was really fortunate in my career to switch among different functions, from product development to product management, to strategy and budget planning, to marketing and sales. And in the past 10 years, I have been contributing to the new technology service deployment. Wireline, wireless, from voice service to IPTV to public safety services, and different technology and services for the consumer, enterprise, and the carrier customers. I love to work in a team environment. I love to work with people, make commitment and deliver on it. Innovate wherever we smell opportunity. I also want to mention that I graduated from University of Toronto with a Master of Engineering degree. Let me turn on a small window of the speaker view. Here we go. What is a technology product? Let's think of a mobile phone service. Think of your own cell phone. How to make it work? Of course, first, you need to have an infrastructure. This is talking about core network, the cell tower, the transport in between, and of course, this is also including the cell phone you have. You have to consider the capacity. This is based on the number of the subscribers you're serving, and of course, the usage per subscriber. Performance monitoring and improvement. And when things not working, you do need to have a break-fix process to fix it. You also need to have the identity provisioning to enable the service and to activate the service. Identity recently has become a really hot topic. This is how you can leverage the security information in the SIM card to authenticate the new services. The basic data and the voice services is given. But when you need to have a Telus or a Rogers manage the service in your cell phone, are you okay to using the SIM card information rather than using password as the over-the-top application to enable the service? How you can provision a new service to the subscriber? How you can run the billing? This is how you can charge the customer. And of course, there's a set of the reports to support the network and the business decision, help the life cycle of the product management. You have to define what is a service. The basic service including the data and the voice, but you can also have the feature added on top of it. Recently, there has been a lot of spam calls, the robotic calls. So we have a feature called call control. So call control is basically when the call comes in, you will ask the caller to enter a key. It could be from 0 to 9, a random generated key, only for the people who can understand the question, understand what key is being requested. He will be able to enter the key. So the robotic calls, which is the most spam callers are using, will not be able to pass this challenge. Value-added service are the service as well, but they are added on top of the basic service. For example, virtual voicemail, or even the roaming service is a value-added service added on top of the basic service. You know, the $3 a day when you travel abroad, those are the value-added service. And of course, you can put multiple services together. Home internet, mobile service, IPTV, together create a bundle and with a discount to increase the stickiness of the customer. How you want to price your service. This is largely based on the cost, but also based on the market. You can have multiple packages for the different segment of people. You know, there are people are looking for unlimited data. There are people want to have minimum data, but be able to using the voice. Customer hardware is largely talking about the cell phone. When you talk about mobile phone service, this is really the cell phone we give to the customer. Think about the average life of the cell phone today is 2 to 3 years. So for a 10 million subscriber company, they usually get 3 million cell phone sold every year. Assume each cell phone is only $500. 3 million new devices equivalent to $1.5 billion revenue opportunity per year. That is a huge. When people buying the phone, they're likely probably will get the cell phone case, even the screen protector purchased at the same time, and sometimes they probably even buying more expensive like the wireless headset. So those are considered as an accessory sales opportunity. How you want to push your service and product to the customer. The channels talking about here, what we refer as the sales channels. You have seen many of the stores with the Telus, Rogers, and the Bell logo. They are the retail stores. The direct sales is when people talk on the phone. Their service is being sold over the phone. Dealers. The service can be sold, leverage the other existing channels. Like for example, Best Buy. They carry Rogers, Telus, and Bell phones, and they're a dealer to those operators. And there's getting more and more popular is online digital. This is talking about just go through the online portal to get a service delivered, to get a service ordered and delivered. So there's no, you don't have to talk to anybody before you can buy your service. Branding is how you want to set up your brand and what kind of a brand, what kind of a message when people think of your brand, think about your brand. You can have the various promotions throughout the year. In Canada, our biggest event used to be the Boxing Day. In the past 4 or 5 years, this has really been replaced by the Black Friday. It became the biggest sales opportunity for all the companies, and the wireless operators are no exception. Usually you get the most aggressive deals during the Black Friday, and we call them promotions. And of course, there's other promotion, for example, September, because many of the students go back to the school, there will be the back to school promotion. Communication, largely, this is the press release. Whenever there's new product launch or new technology launch, we like to have the press release to tell people and to create that communication to reach to the end users. Loyalty program, many of them calling the points program. So you can, based on how much you buy, how much you spend, you will collect the points to redeem some of the offers from the loyalty program. Of course, you have to invest the customer and collect the payment. You have the customer care to look after the customer. It could be a phone call, it could be an online chat. Field operations is necessary. You have to dispatch your operation to the field to help the customer. Let's look at what are the teams are looking after those functions. So infrastructure, capacity, performance, and break fix typically is looked after by a technology team. They're the foundation of the technology services. You have the business support system. In most companies referred as IT department, looking after the provisioning, the activation, the billing, and the reporting. Service definition and the pricing, those are typically the product functions. Of course, you have the sales to push the product and the service to the customers, and you have the marketing to looking after the branding, the promotion, and other communications. So customer experience is getting more critical these days because they look after the end-to-end customer experience. Start from the ordering to the usage to where they have the problem, how you can look after their problem and fix it, and including the invoicing and collecting. This end-to-end process is really determining how good the customer experience is going to be. Now let's look at the product and marketing. So let's start with the product and market. What is a product? Product is something you can offer to satisfy a want or a need. What is a market? Market is a place you can trade. More specifically, it's a system, institution, or a procedure where parties engage in exchange. Typically, this is for the seller to give the goods or service in exchange money from the buyers. When we look at the market, there certainly have the different market segments: consumer market, enterprise market, and usually they determine the organizational structure as well because they are very different. You have to apply the different strategy and different tactics for different markets. For example, the most effective ways to reach out to the consumer are the public advertising through the regular radio, the TV channels, the YouTube, or even online. Those are pretty effective channels to tell the people what we have for the consumer market. Or for the enterprise market, usually you leverage the professional association, sometimes just the professional references, or some existing channels. For example, if you have a security solution you want to sell, you probably want to sell to those internet access customer, the enterprise customer already with you. You can either have a single product or a group of products as a bundle to sell. For example, a service operator, a service provider, we sell the telecom services, And you don't expect a service provider in the telecom market to sell food, drinks, or groceries, right? But sometimes they do have the overlap between different markets. For example, TELUS, in the past years, we have been really focused on the e-health. It's called TELUS Health. It's a vertical market. So it started with selling the data service to this market, but gradually we start even rolling out the health product also. So it's a group as e-health. It's a one vertical market. So this is the product strategy as how started with the data, then get into the actual vertical market services. Other than product strategy, what other things are considered under product? The business case. Business case is really looking at the cost, the revenue and the profit, and seeing the return. But sometimes it's also looking at the addressable market size and where the investment come from and what the investment are looking for. For example, back in 2001, there's a dot-com bubble burst. Before that, it's probably about 1995 to early 2000. There was dot-com bubble time. The Nasdaq index rose 400% in 5 years, but it fell 78% by October 2002. So in just like a short 2 years. At the time, the investors are looking at stories. They don't really care about how much revenue and the profit comes in. They're looking at the number of the customers, the base you can build up quickly. They fuel the investment in the stocks. As long as your name or your domain has a .com there, the venture capital will give you the money. It becomes so crazy that nobody is looking at the profit. People are just trying to see how quickly they can expand in the market. Story become more critical, and this boosted the job market crazily as well. So I remember at the time I have a friend who got a job interview in one of the great company back then. After interview, he's just walking from the interview room to the door. There are two other managers stopped him, asking if he's being interviewed here, and offered another job. So the job market, the competition was very different compared to today. Other things, the user experience. What value you create? What are the use case or user journey? It's including the business process and the flows. Probably not many of you know that Apple, their flagship service and product is really the iPhone. But back then, it started with the computer business. In 1996, Apple almost went bankrupt. That's the time when Microsoft launched Windows 95. It almost killed Macs. Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997 to turn around the business. At the time, Apple was really a minor player. The brand being Apple makes technology so simple that everyone can be part of the future. Think about it. Is it still true today? I would say they haven't really changed that overall product strategy yet. So starting from 1997, they really turned around Apple. Steve Jobs and his Apple team back then have been setting a user experience first approach. What they did is simply follow, set vision, make the investment, and stay extremely focused on consumer first mentality to transform the leading edge technology into accessible consumer products. They leverage the breakthrough markets. They are not necessarily the first in the market, but they want to be the fast followers, but make it simple, make it extremely user-friendly. Think of the Apple's product, the desktop, the laptop, smartphones, Apple Watches, the tablets, and the TV. They all following a very similar approach. And they created a consumer ecosystem with a loyal customer base. Apple's revenue was 5.7 billion in 2005, and this grew to 240 billion in 2015 and 275 billion in 2020. The other thing amazing about Apple is they have amazing gross margin. Their gross margin is maintained at 40% or higher. This is phenomenal in a consumer market business. Every year, there's a Apple technology launch event. It's so much fun to just watch it. It's friendly, it's user-friendly and consumer-friendly. Apple is extremely well on this communication. There's a few years they've been attacking their competitors, which is the PC and Windows. They directly highlighted the flaws of the Windows, and they're saying if you're frustrated with Windows, come to Mac. There are a few years, their commercials is all over the place and specifically target and attack the PC and Windows. Now let's take a look at the marketing. By name, marketing is how you connect the product to the market. The traditional marketing include the price, the place, the promotion on top of your products. So you need to understand your market. And sometimes you have to further segment the market, find the most reliable and efficient way to reach to your customers. You have to consider your own branding. The service operator in telecom in Canada usually maintain multiple brands. Like TELUS, for example, have 3 brands. It's TELUS, Koodo, and Public Mobile. They represent full touch or high touch, low touch, and zero touch in terms of the customer service. When you are using Public Mobile, you usually all the transaction and the issue fix will be done online. And there are customers prefer the online rather than talking to the people. And of course, because of lower cost structure, there's a pricing difference as well. And they also have the different sales channel to reach different people. Other things, you can share your strategy and plan with the market. Highlight your differentiation compared to your competitors. There's also marketing analysis to highlight where you are and what your marketing strategy is going to be. So typically we call marketing analysis 5 C's. That 5 C's represent company, collaboration. This is talking about how you work with the partner and the investors and suppliers. And the other 3 C's are the customers, competitors, and the claimant. This is not just how to promote a product. This is how you run the marketing strategy to connect to the market. Data analytics and the KPIs, including some of the artificial intelligence, in the recent years has been promoting the new service and help to use the least cost to reach the most majority and the most effective customer base. Friendly user testing has been recently also another I wouldn't say it started with the IPTV industry. So it's a very norm practice for the IPTV industry. When they roll out a new service, they regularly leverage the friendly user group to test out and collect the feedback before they become a formal product. Part of the friendly user testing is really to collect the data to improve where you are still running the development. So this is also part of the data analytics. Digital marketing is to advertising and the communication delivered through the digital channels. The digital channels including search engines, the websites, sometimes social medias, or just emails, and mobile apps. The beauty of the digital marketing is the surgical approach. You may adjust and optimize the digital assets based on the feedback loops on the customer responsiveness. If you are not achieving the result, you can fail fast. The cost is usually based on the pay per click, which means the incremental cost is very reasonable. Digital marketing become more and more popular these days. Most of the internet service provider or the content provider have their own digital marketing business. One of the key considerations of marketing is what customer you want to target based on the nature of your products. And based on your target, you can come up with the best brand identity and how you position and price your product. So here are just some examples as what the market segmentations are. Lifestyle. If you're trying to sell a product to the frequent travelers and you want to choose a magazine or a newspaper to write your ads, you probably want to give a better chance to the National Geographic magazine over a local newspaper, just because the traveler rarely reads the newspaper. Or you can also consider maybe to leverage the professional association to have your product pushed to the desired user group. Why? Because most of the travels are triggered by the business. The age, the gender, the occupation, the education, those define the demographic segments. Think of some of the, the luxury brand versus the mass market brand. They take a very different marketing approach. Think of a Lexus versus Toyota. Do you know many of the car parts between Lexus and Toyota are interchangeable? Some of the frames are actually identical between Lexus and Toyota. But when people think about these two brands, they get very different feeling because of the different marketing approach. The luxury brands usually sell the status and the way of life. Mass market brand sell the value and the benefit. Geographic. In the southern US, you can see many of the convertible cars there, but you rarely see them in Canada. Why? Because we have an extra long winter and it's really, really cold. User status, loyalty, how the people to avoid the risk, the readiness to purchase, and the discount. Those are the behavior factors to drive the sales. In some of the grocery store, you notice those like a small package of the candies, just put into the shelves, closer to the cash register. You know why? Because they do have those larger package, but people, when they think about the large package of the candy, sometimes they feel guilty, right? There's too much sugar there. When it's a smaller package, people feel less guilty and have a higher desire to buy, especially if you make it so convenient for them to pick and run at the cashier. There's a better chance they will buy it. And that's exactly what happened. And this is why there's many of those like smaller items are put close to the exit. Other market segments could be driven by the vertical market. So I remember once there's a vendor come to me and he has a great idea of a product. He's actually thinking of pre-activated SIM card for the cell phone service. The SIM card today you can buy from the grocery store. But his idea is he will have this SIM card with the customer information preloaded. So the trick is where you can get this customer information. His idea is, think about the overseas traveler come to Canada. When they pass the custom and the immigration, they will have to submit their personal information. Automatically link those personal information into the SIM card. You will be able to make the sales right on the spot, and also make this sales experience a lot smoother. Except there's one thing he forgot. The only customer in Canada he could target, there's only one, and called Canada Border Service. If he's lucky, get this customer, it's great. But for whatever reason, if he cannot make the sale to this one single customer, his business is completely halted in Canada. So do you really want to run your business case over one single customer and make the super risk? So when you define the market segmentation, a couple of things you do want to make sure to pay the attention. One is it has to be measurable. And this segment need to be stable as well. If they vary day by day, it might not be the right way to segment your market. And of course, it has to be profitable. And also, equally important, it has to be reachable as well. Many of you probably have heard red ocean versus the blue ocean. If you are working in a marketing team, this is like probably quite often you heard, let's take a blue ocean strategy. So the red ocean versus the blue ocean, it came in actually from a book in 2004. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy. At a very high level, red ocean referring to the existing market. You compete based on your efficiency and your lower cost. Blue ocean is considering the additional demand driven by the new market. If you can create a untested market space, then of course there's a lot of advantage you can take on. You can avoid some of the hyper competition compared to the red ocean. This is really the key concept of the red versus the blue. But the basic idea here is really you need to think of the market or the industry even before thinking of the company. If you can create a blue ocean, being the first mover, uncover some of the actual demand, or even just to make sure you stay in a growing market, is all the blue oceans. And you can take a lot of a strategy, you can take a lot of a benefit there compared to the red ocean. There's no right or wrong, right? There are many of the companies still compete in the red ocean. It's not saying red ocean is bad. But in the red ocean, you compete based on your cost structure, based on your effectiveness. If you can do good, I can do better. So that is how you compete in the red ocean. And the blue ocean is all about how you can create this additional demand and ride on it. Think about the red ocean. I would say the school is probably a red ocean. You know, all the students in the school, in the class, right? You compete for the better grade. But in this case, you know, the environment are similar from one to the other. You really base on your study, your result, and the effort to get a better result. So that's more like a red ocean. I'm not saying I suggest you guys to quit, but if one of the students say, you know what, I'm not going to care about grades. I want to create my own startup by defining a new market. Then he's really quitting the school and joining the blue ocean. But in that case, he's not really compete to get a better grade. He's trying to drive the additional demand in the market, in a new market. So usually the blue ocean is driven by the innovation. The whole idea is to make the competition irrelevant. Now let's spend some time on the business case. What is a business case? Essentially, this is to share your plan and your targeted financials with others. First of all, it's a story. So you have to make it compelling. Some of the business cases support new business. You know, the idea of having a new business like a startup. The people you want to share with are the investors, like the venture capitals. Those could be the investment banks or even the investor in the private sectors, but they have the money, they are willing to invest on the good business. But sometimes the business case could be really just to support a project. You're trying to convince your boss to agree or to prove a project proposal with the budget allocation. That can be leveraged, the business case, to achieve that as well. I love this slogan. You have to tell a story before you can sell a story. Beth Comstock is I think she used to be a vice chair in GE. So she's one of those senior executives responsible for the innovation, for the product and business development. You have to tell a story before you can sell a story. You need to have a solid story, but you also have to make sure you manage how you communicate. You manage the perception of your audience and manage the result. So there's a standard template for the business case. Started with a problem statement. What issue you're trying to address? What benefit you're trying to achieve? The reason, the impact, and some high level, the size and the time. Then you start talking about the benefit, right? Think about if this is the audience, if the audience really the investment banks, then you need to let them know why this is a compelling business case. The revenue, the profit, sometimes we call it top line and bottom line. It is something can be considered as a cost saving opportunity. So it doesn't really generate the revenue, it doesn't generate the profit, but you can save the existing cost. And here's also the place you can mention some of the benefit, but hard to quantify. You need to get into the cost. What is the investment in order to achieve the result? What are the risks you have to put on paper, just showing, here's a beautiful business case, here's the low cost, the high return. However, the risk is super high as well. For example, if I'm taking the money to gamble, of course, the cost might not be high. Actually, arguably, it could be very high. But let's assume the cost could be low, but the benefit could be very high. However, the risk is extremely high as well. We'll get into a bit more details in the next slide with the example. So I'll park it here. You have to give a high-level solution, but keep in mind who your audience are. The solution, the detail level, the granularity is really based on the audience, their knowledge, and what they're looking for. You don't really want to go into a lot of bits and bytes if the audience is really for the investors. Implementation, share some details to make this very convincing. You already considered how long it will take and what are the dependencies you have to work out before the project can finish. So those details will make your story a lot more convincing. And most importantly, in the business case, you want to include a ROI model. The ROI stands for return on investment. So this is a very specific model. There's a tons of the model you can search on the internet, so I'm not going to get into a lot of details. Those are really like a financial one-on-one. You can find them easily. But generally speaking, this is talking about the net present value over the next X years. Net present value means the money, today's money, is more expensive than tomorrow's money. So the money has a value based on the time. In a simple way to think through that is, if you have $1 today, a year later, this dollar, even by put into the bank, you're probably going to have the dollar plus the interest, right? So that's why I'm saying today's $1 is more expensive than $1 a year later. At the end, you want to use the discounted payback period. Like if you consider any of the return on investment, you will have some initial cost. and you probably have some recurring cost. So when will be your break-even point based on the revenue? Because the revenue could be slow at the beginning, but then constantly ramping up. So the cost kind of like over the time come down, the revenue or the profit going up. So how long will it take that break even to come? So this is the basic components into a business case. Let's take an example, okay? So in this particular example, I'm trying to, it's not a new business opportunity, it's actually a new project. So in a company, you identified a problem. The problem here is you have a system, you have a platform that is already out of support. It's like aged platform. The reliability become a issue and you need to upgrade or replace it. So that's basically the problem statement. Of course, the benefit is going to be better reliability, right? How you quantify this benefit, you can probably consider, how bad the situation is already. Are you already getting the outages from time to time based on the platform challenges? If you have some outage already happened, you can probably even quantify the damage those outage already result, and then using those quantifiable damage to justify the cost, which you are covering in the next section. The cost could be different if you're considering, I will run some in-house development to come up with a new platform, or I may buy from the vendor directly. So in-house development, certainly the cost generally is lower, but the risk is higher because we might not have the expertise that vendor has already acquired from other of their customers. So vendor solution could be costly, but the risk generally is lower versus the in-house development. So those are the risks you have to call out. So quite often it's hard to, the risk I believe might not be the risk you believe. Even the severity level of the risk is hard to quantify. So in this case, sometimes we call it scenario analysis. So I can say, here's the best case scenario, and here's the worst case scenario. So most likely the reality is going to be sitting between the best case and the worst case. So I'm having the two analysis based on the best case and the worst case, and count out the risk under each of them. And as long as we can accept both best and worst, then of course anything in the middle is acceptable as well. The solution at a very high level, here's the software architecture, here's the infrastructure requirement, here's how we put things together to finish the integration. Stay high level, because at the end, this is a business case, is trying to justify the funding rather than to prove the solution is the best solution. Get into the implementation, share some of the details of the timeline and the dependency. So in this case, I'm calling it a D+6. So D being the date, the D being the date that you get the investment, you get the funding allocated to you, so you can start spending and get the project kicked off. And also to call out any of the dependency as the implementation detail as well. So at the end, you put the return on investment. So it's really based on the cost, and the cost usually you will do on the annual or on the monthly cost breakdown in order to show that the initial cost and the recurring cost, but overall the cost over the time should reducing, where the benefit, is going to go up. So in this case, it's probably hard to benefit as revenue. You can consider, based on the outage, which will be, the cost avoidance, or based on some of the cost saving could be as well, right? So the return on investment is to quantify the financial benefit and the cost. The cost could be the capital cost, could be OPEX. So generally the difference between capital and OPEX is capital is the investment you put in to create an asset. So that asset itself has a value. So think about if you're developing a software, if you are purchasing some hardware, or even the cost you pay for the labor to develop the software, sometimes we call the internal labor, the people cost. And in order to finish the project, you need to have the integration finish, you need to have the service migration finish. Those are all considered as a capital. Where the OPEX usually is considered as a recurring cost. It's not really adding the value to the asset you have, but you have to spend it in order to keep it running. So the maintenance and support and any other recurring networking cost is what we consider as OPEX. As an example, in this particular case, I'm calling the net present value over 5 years is going to be 2.9 million. So if you look at the overall 5 years with the net present value, I'm saying the cost versus the overall benefit is going to be a net $2.9 million gain. The payback period is going to be 3.9 years. So with all the initial investment, only at the 3.9 year, that time spent, you're going to break even. Okay, so this is one of the examples as how you show your business case. Couple of tips as how you can make a good business case even better. Always know your audience. And always keep in mind that decision makers are generalists, they're not specialists. So trying to stay at a higher level, but you have to get the message across. And in a way, being concise. Think about it. Most of the decision makers, if they are really reviewing the different investment opportunity, they probably have a tons of it in front of him or her. He or she constantly reading all the different business cases. If your business case stand out as concise, but also have a lot of information crossed, you certainly will get some extra bonus points. The story has to be convincing. So you cannot just stay high level and make some like a very generic statement saying it's going to create the benefit for the company. You have to get into some of the detail to make that message convincing. For example, leverage some data using the data points. If there's an outage, quantify how often the outages are and each outage how much cost is going to occur. Leverage the credibility. So this is actually interesting. There are a lot of tricks you can play as how you build credibility, but none of the tricks is going to be better than in reality how you can show your credibility. If you have run a similar project in the past, you always deliver on it, it's going to be the credibility. You have built multiple startup company in the past, and 80% of them have been successful. It's credibility. If those are not really anything you can mention, then trying to link your project or your business to something more credible. Like for example, you probably notice that many of the startup company that have those senior executive from the existing business sitting at the company board. The SVP, the EVP from the well-known company sitting in a startup company board is helping the credibility. Of course, they also provide their expertise and the guidance to make sure the company not making the major mistake, but it also helps the credibility. Okay. Show that you are invest into the repeatability. It's not a one-time opportunity, because if the business is sustainable or not, mostly it's going to be driven by how the business model is repeatable or the business opportunity going to be repeatable. I can sell 1 million customers, but I have to start the first one, but the opportunity is going to be 1 million. And the way I sell is going to be the same between I sell this first customer and the rest of the 1 million customer. So here is where you can highlight some of the process and models you want to set up to benefit the future opportunities. Try not to offer too much information, because in reality, if you feel the information could be there or not necessarily be there, the chances that you probably don't need that information to be included, because a lot of info you offered voluntarily could come back to backfire on you. So always ask yourself, is the information really necessary? If not, or only good to have, put a big question mark. You probably don't want to include too much information there. And of course, you also want to save some of the additional details during the meetings, during the interviews, rather than just put into the business case at the submission. And remember that return on investment, one of the key performance indicator is the payback period. So payback period is really your cost and your profit as when the break-even point is going to be, right? So of course, one thing to make that payback period shorter is to defer your initial cost. If you have to put $1 million at the beginning in order to get the project going, think hard. If there's a way you can put, maybe this $1 million could become a $200,000 per year for the next 5 years. And if you flatten that, the investment cost is going to get your payback period a lot shorter because that break-even point is going to be faster. Let's take a quick look at the organization structure of a technology company. So we spend a lot of time talk about how we can productize a technology. So under an organization structure, how it works, what are the teams a typical technology company would have? Of course, you need the president and the CEO. Sometimes you have a president office to support your president. And after that, generally you have three big buckets to running the business. So you have a business team. This typically is a how and where you generate the revenue. Define your product. So you have the business planning team. You will have the marketing product team, as we mentioned earlier today. You will also have the sales team in order to get to sign the deal, to close the deal, and bring the revenue in. You also have the customer experience team to stay close with the customer and to drive the better customer experience. We certainly will have the technology team. This is the one, we're probably most familiar with. This is how we develop, engineer, and operation a technology. They could be the software development, they could be the QA team, and also the business support team to bridge the gap between the business and the technology to translate some of the high-level business requirement into technological deliverables. Other than the technology and the business, for a healthy company, you also need the corporate functions. This is talking about finance. You heard the CFO, and the CFO is the lead of the finance department. There's a human resource. Sometimes you will hear the chief human resource officer, which is the lead of the human resource department. You have the communication and the corporate affair. They look after the public relationship with outside the company. You have the legal team to help you deal with all the legal affairs. Regulatory is to look at what the industry and what is the overall the market environments are, and especially any of the rules set up by the government. Corporate development, this is where you want to bring the corporate, you want to bring the overall company to in a long run. This organization structure is a fairly generic, and it apply to the small company, also the large company. So even though there's many of the different boxes, for a startup, you probably don't have that many people, which only means in the startup, you have people probably playing the multiple functions. The president could be your prime architect as well. The developer could be the support staff as well, right? So you could have multiple boxes run by the same person, but the function-wise, you will still have those different boxes just to keep the function, to keep the organization working in a healthy way. The reason we mention here is because understand how an organizational structure running, you probably will see where the opportunities are. Especially I want to call out, there are two boxes, one under business called go-to-market. This is when you define the product, when you have the technology development finished and the product ready to roll, how you want to get this product to the market. It's not completely a business position. They actually require a lot of technology understanding as well. So many of the scientists and the engineers actually be part of the go-to-market effort. The business support, earlier I mentioned, this is to translate the business requirement into technological deliverables, which means they also need to have the bigger picture, but the deep technology understanding, sometime to the level a regular architect would have. So this is also a very senior position, or could become a senior position. Those are the opportunity for the scientists and engineers as well. Quick recap of what we discussed today. We started talking about, what is really a technology product is. Other than technology itself, there are many other components you have to put together, run by the different teams to make it a sellable product you can give to the customer. We covered some of the basic concepts, the product, the marketing, the market segments, the blue ocean versus red ocean, and followed by, we quickly talk about technology organization structure, what's it look like. Before we meet in our Q&A session, I'd like you to take 5 minutes to go through a quick exercise. Consider a business case for a 5G edge computing to support augmented reality. Augmented reality is a technology, and you can leverage this technology to come up the use case or the products that you can offer to the customer. So the key exercise here is to unleash your imagination, trying to consider what kind of use cases or the business opportunities could be empowered by the augmented reality as a technology. Try to also give some thoughts as the 7 components of the business case. You don't have to write them down, just think through them, and it's going to help our Q&A session become fruitful. This concludes our discussion today. I look forward to seeing you all in the Q&A session. Thank you.